we wanted to bring up some multi-unit, multi-brand franchisees and just get some perspective from these guys. So we've got a phenomenal group of operators here. We've got one more that's going to be joining. Quick backstory on me. I actually first learned about franchising when I was really young. It was through a multi-unit franchisee. It was of Sonic. And then they bought into multiple other brands. And so kind of the story of why we started the podcast, very much enjoy chatting, obviously spending a lot of time with franchisors, but the multi-unit franchisees, you could come up and join, Charles. We kicked it off. But so yeah, it's just very much enjoy the perspective that these guys have. And let's go ahead and go down the line. We need one more mic, by the way, too. Here, take this. I'll stand. So Jesse, very quickly introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about yourself and about the portfolio that you guys have.
Well, on the bookends is me, Jesse, and Charles, my brother over there. We're equal partners. We started with our first franchise concept in 2005. It was Little Caesars. 2008, I got a smart idea to become a Valpak franchisee. It was not a good time to do that. Learned a lot, stayed with it for a few years, 4 or 5 years. And during that time, too, ran into OxyFresh carpet cleaning, but before that was Sport Clip haircuts. So we got into Sport Clip haircuts in 2010, and OxyFresh we got in 2014. Yeah. So we've owned and operated those all that time. Just last month, we sold our Little Caesars. Got a good multiple on that. I think the time was right for us to exit that brand. And we're working on a deal right now with Ideal Image for 15 units. It's a Medi-Spa concept. And we're also working on another non-franchise concept. It's going to be an esports bar. So it's like social gaming, Top Golf kind of concept. So all that stuff launches this year, actually.
Very nice. Anything that you want to add?
No.
Got it. Johnny.
Johnny Weber. I'm in Nashville, Tennessee. And this is my son, Cole Weber. My other son, Tanner, is out here in the audience. So we're happy to have them here. I started back in 2008 with Sport Clips Haircuts. We've grown to 58 stores in that model. We have 6 Pet Supplies Pluses as well. And then we bought the rights to the Red Phone booth and signed our first lease in Miami, which is a speakeasy focused on cigars and whiskey concept.
Yeah, the place is very awesome, by the way. Which neighborhood's it going to be in?
The address is 1010 Brickell, so it's in Miami, in the Brickell area. And we bought the rights to South Florida, so we're hoping to open several of those stores down in that market.
Just for an idea of the scale of the operations, how many units do you run currently across all the different brands?
We also have a juice bar that Tanner runs as well called I Love Juice Bar. We also have a little Italian restaurant downtown Franklin, Tennessee. So we have north of 60 units total.
Very nice. Cole.
And we think we had a little success until we come to these meetings.
I think you've had a tremendous amount of success, and I think everyone in this room would love you guys to be operators in their brand. But Cole, quick blurb on you and your focus.
Yeah, so thanks for finally putting a young person on the stage. So it is the young conference. But, fresh out of college, been out of college 3 years. But, I've learned a lot from my dad over the years, just always kind of telling me what was going on in business, the good times, the tough times. Everybody wants to run their own business and think it's, gravy's just going to be pouring in. And, you got it made in the shade. But there's a lot of really tough times that a lot of y'all have probably went through, like we went through. Probably the coolest part is that we get to do it together. Now my little brother's out of college. He's working with us. I've got a few years under my belt, and it's just a lot of fun. You never know what your day's going to look like, and I kind of like that because I would be so bored if I was working an office job.
Yeah. I'll start with you, Charles. Whenever you guys, like you obviously just mentioned Ideal Image and a number of different things, whenever you're looking to buy into a brand, obviously profitability, unit economics, etc., but what is it that you guys are really evaluating, and how do you go about those decisions?
Well, I mean, a lot of it has to do with the leadership team, with the organization. If I can find out, what kind of debt, honestly, what their numbers look like, kind of kind of tells me what could be of the future. That's really important. I mean, the financial part of it's really important as well. The ease to scale it. What's it going to look like to replicate that? Is it replicable, right? On a big scale, cross states. What's it look like for it to be manager operated in order to scale? Those are some things in particular I look at.
Anything that you would add to that, Jesse?
I think now, knowing what we know about our strengths as a partnership, we're the only brands that we would be interested in jumping into are ones that have things figured out much better and faster than we do in that industry. And even though we're going to give up, let's say, 6% royalties, I need to feel pretty confident that, well, let me give you an example. So Little Caesars had a 6% royalty, right? I was getting better grocery economics than that 6%. It was a no-brainer for me to be a franchise. Because if I went to Cisco, I would have paid a lot more for my cheese and everything else. So those are the kind of things that I'm looking for is it actually cheaper to be in business with you than to do it myself?
Yep. Johnny, you've built the machine. You're making investments in different brands. What are you looking for?
Well, I think when you're a franchisee and you're looking at any franchisor concept, and I love coming to the IFAs, I love coming to the young conferences and all these springboards. And a lot of people ask me, why do you come? You're a franchisee. Well, there's so many people, men and women out there that you meet that are very, very strong business leaders out there in the world that are here today at the IFAs and the young conferences and those springboards and all these events that we go to. And we meet, the Lane Fishers and the Brad Fishmans and Sherry, and people that you would never meet outside of these groups. So that's the reason I like to come to these. To answer your question is, when you're looking at a franchisor, obviously the item 19 means a lot, right? We all know that. But also, I think the leadership team, when you meet with the leadership team, how easy are they to talk to? How do you think they're going to support you in your growth? How flexible do you think they're going to be during the COVID times? Pre-COVID, we always said, hey, we love sport clips. You're never going to be able to get that on the internet. Wow, that was so true, right? We don't want to be a blockbuster. But then we didn't think about the pandemic. We shut 58 stores down within a week's time. I know you guys have done a lot of the same things out there, but gosh, man, we didn't even think about the pandemic. Trying to get those stores back open. How flexible is your franchisor? Maybe we need to move some of that marketing dollars back into recruiting dollars. Because right now it's not about getting the client in. Right now it's about getting the employee in, and not only getting the employee hired, but also, being that employer of choice and making sure that that we retain these employees as well is so important. The other thing I always think about, when you're talking to the franchise development person, right? They're always selling you a franchise. Well, that's what we're there for, to be sold. But you're like, man, if it's such a great model, why is he or she not doing it? If it's such a great model, why is the franchisor not running their own company stores? That's important to me, right? Because if it's such a great model, why do they not want to run their own units? Now, let's flip that a little bit. I've also been on the other side of the table where it was such a lucrative business that I'd had a deal on a few stores, and the franchisor exercised a right of first refusal on me. That's happened to me more than once, which is painful as a franchisee and trying to grow the brand. And so that's the reason we started looking at other models and other opportunities to grow as an entrepreneur.
So give me one thing, and I'll just throw this up, and whoever wants to take it can take it. What is, and you don't have to name any brands or throw anything under the bus, but what are some things that you wish that your franchisors would do a lot better? I know that's a very open-ended question. I'm sure you've got battle stories and war stories, but what say you, Jesse?
I would say we run the whole gambit with all the brands that we've been in, and the ones that we like the least are the ones that view human capital as a liability and not an investment. And it's not just how they view their corporate employees, but how they view their franchisees. You don't like it? We'll just sell it to someone else. We've seen the opposite side of that too, where the franchisor really does think humans are an investment in your company and not a liability. And those relationships are a lot better. They're fun. They're the flexibility Johnny was talking about. So that's something that we look at too is, what is their culture like? How are they treating their own employees?
Yeah, so piggybacking off that, I mean, I think you hit it. Is someone that really cares about the people that they're going into business with. Pet Supplies Plus, for example, they have a smaller royalty fee, so we don't have the shiny app, the best technology. But what they do have is really, really good people at corporate that we have their cell phone. We have the CEO's cell phone, and, we don't always try to bother him, but, we have these relationships, and they work on the relationships just like we work on them. And a lot of times I feel like in a franchise, you try to build the relationship with them, but they don't want to bring it back to you. And so that's something with Pet Supplies Plus we really love.
I think a relevant topic of today is, the support around being able to give comprehensive advice on pricing. I mean, we're all taking a look at pricing, and the brands that have some good data behind it to make decisions on what the price increase is going to do, the impact, and the threshold on what you can do versus ones that haven't really dug into that, to me, it's kind of a game changer. So I think that's really important, is the KPIs around what pricing does, because for it to be a brand that's scaled across the U.S., yes, unique markets can have some nuances to it, but overall, there's going to be something there that could be provided to make good decisions for pricing.
Yep. Anything else to add, Johnny? So you mentioned labor, obviously, in the Sport Clips business. I'm sure it's been really tough. Anything that your franchisor has done that has helped tremendously? You mentioned earlier shifting, marketing dollars and putting that into recruitment. But is there anything tactically or big picture wise that your franchisor has done to really help? And just really any advice or nuggets on that?
Yeah, I think in the Sport Clips model, that's our number one challenge right now is getting employees hired. And so I think somebody mentioned it earlier, it may have been you, David, but when somebody calls or fills out an application, you got to get them in for an interview quickly and get them hired within 24 hours for sure, because they're absolutely looking. But then looking beyond that is the people you really want working in your salons are the people already out there working. And so how do you find those people? That's the question. I always tell my team, there's only a few reasons why a store doesn't do well if it's a good model. It's either your employees or it's marketing, right? It's either getting people in the door or it's retaining those people, which is
or
that
location, right?
Or location.
I've picked some doozies.
Could be a location, but hopefully, between the franchisee and the franchisor, you're picking decent locations. But getting that person in there to utilize that haircut or retain them is so important. So I always say, gosh, what do we need to do to go out there and find those people? Without saying a lot of names, if there's a competitor out there that's operating across the street, I say, why do they have stylists and we can't find stylists? What do we need to do better to gain those employees? And with the Pet Supplies Plus model, we've been very, very fortunate. A lot of people love animals. They're not as money driven or focused. So we've had a lot more success hiring people there.
Anything else to add?
I think the one thing I'll add to that is, and I'm blessed because I love working in the pet industry. Like, it's the furry family members, and so people want to work there. But in whatever brand you're in, and a couple times it's been hit on today, is like, how are you the employer of choice? How do you get people to want to work for you? One, you have to have a good model, but two, you have to build a good culture inside your four walls. I always say, if we can make everybody happy in our store, whether it's our employees, we call our customers neighbors, our neighbors, or their furry family members, we're going to win every time. So that's the culture we try to drive in our stores.
Jesse, you sit on multiple advisory councils, technology committees, and all the rest. I don't know if you still do. I'm sure some are better than others, but any advice for franchisors in the room as it relates to having an effective structure?
Well, I can tell you what I don't like is the situation where I'm supposed to go carry the water for the company for my area that I'm defined as the representative of. It's not my job to carry the water, right? It's my job to advise, give you my impact or input on decisions being made, and being available for questions to the franchisor. I personally don't like it when I have to shoot out emails giving updates when corporate should be doing that, and it should be coming from the horse's mouth. What I do like, when we're brought in early enough in a decision that even though we don't have full control of it, clearly, we do have some impact. And I've learned, be really quiet unless you really care about that one particular issue. And if you make a big stink about that issue, they're gonna pay attention because you're normally quiet, right? You're not the guy in there trying to change everything every minute. So, yeah, my advice is don't have them carry your water for the communication with your franchise network. That should be a relationship you guys should have.
Anybody in the audience have a question that they would like to ask these gentlemen? Go ahead.
Okay, this is an expansion on what you just said, Jesse. What advice, maybe do's and don'ts, do you have for franchisors if they want to implement solutions brand-wide with the franchisees? You know, if you have any, I don't know, horror stories or good stories, I'm just curious what that looks like.
You know, I'm on some councils that are elected. It's a popularity contest. Luckily, Johnny's got enough stores on my market. He votes for me and I get in. But, and then I get appointed to some of them. And I'm appointed to them because they feel like I'm a thought leader, right? I think if you want to have good relationships, you're going to have something where the franchisees can have people represented. But even on that council, there's still a thought leader that Sport Clips adds to the council that doesn't run. So I think that's important to have the thought leaders, not just the popular ones or the ones that can get the most votes, being on that board. And so that's going to come from your interaction with them. I mean, if they're good operators, right, then those are probably the people you want on there. The other thing I'd have you think about is everyone in this room is either a simplifier or a multiplier. You could say you do both, and as entrepreneurs we have to, but you get your energy from doing one of those two activities, right? I'm a multiplier, Charles is a simplifier. So I'm always figuring out how can we get the next location. He's always like, how can we make more money on that same location? I think if you're gonna be looking for franchisees, I think you want more multipliers and simplifiers, because the simplifiers are gonna figure out how to make great money on 3 or 4 locations. Multipliers are gonna be like, I wanna make good money, but I want 20 locations. And from your guys' business model, that makes more sense, right? So I would look at that, you know, simplifiers and multipliers. Now, here's the thing. When my organization with Charles got big, it was really clear he was a simplifier. In the very beginning, he was a multiplier operating with me too. Now Charles handles all the back office stuff, right? So he's always trying to squeeze the most money out of each thing on the backside. And I'm always trying to get the top line as high as possible. So yeah, that would be my advice, is kind of identify who in your organization and who you want to bring on. Are they simplifiers or multipliers?
The last thing I would add to that, it's kind of obvious, but if you're inviting franchisees in to have a conversation and you're asking questions and saying, this is what we're thinking about doing, what's your input, and nothing happens with it, really quick that franchise group starts feeling like that was a dog and pony show just to bring in to appease. But, you know, the sentiment can turn sour pretty quick. So if there's intention to do something with what's being asked, do it so they feel like there's an actual contribution to it. Because whether it's Zoom or you're going to fly into a meeting for it, it does feel like a waste of time if nothing happens with it. And it's just that execution part.
Guys, every Zor in this room would love to find Z's like you. How have you found your brands now, past, future? How do you find a brand?
Well, back in 2007, I went to a franchise show in Las Vegas and just really found Sport Clips. There wasn't many brands there, to be honest, and I always liked the hair care industry, and so that's how I found Sport Clips. Not really rocket science, unfortunately. But as I got into the model and started growing the business, I started looking at other concepts. Of course, Cole and Tanner were very, very young at the time. You know, that was, 12, 14 years ago, believe it or not. And so it's been fun to bring them on board. So Cole graduated almost 3 years ago. Tanner graduated back in May, so almost a year later. Now the question is, what do you guys like? What do you want to do? You know, because now it's not all about me and what I want, and it really never was, but they were so young that they didn't have a lot of input. So for me, it's like, what do you want to do? You know, Tanner said, hey, I like the Seven Brews concept. It's a concept out of Fayetteville, Arkansas. It's a drive-through coffee coffee spot. And he said, I want to do that, Dad. And so we looked into it. We bought the rights to South Florida. And so he's really fired up about that. That's what gets him out of bed every morning, is thinking about how can we do a real estate tour? How can we find these locations and so forth? Cole, just really, I had a bad partner in Pet Supplies Plus after I found that model. And let me back up a little bit. How did I find that model? You know, some of the best people in the room to ask about the models are the bankers. You know, when I got into business, you know, I cashed my 401k in, my IRAs, I went all in for my first 3 stores. I didn't have a safety net. Dave and I were talking about that yesterday. I didn't have a safety net, so I had to hustle. And so through that, I met a lot of bankers and a lot of good bankers. And I know that guy may tell me no, but that guy may tell me no, and that girl may tell me no, but this guy's going to tell me yes. I just got to get through enough no's to my next yes, right? So I know a lot of bankers. And so I'd actually asked Ron Feldman one day at the multi-unit franchising conference several years ago. I said, what model do you like out there, Ron? Because he's financing deals, right? And he said, I like the Pet Supplies Plus model. And so that's how we got in that model.
You want to tell our story? All right. So we're in our 20s. I'm working for a .com startup company. We're like, we want to do our own thing. Practice wife was from Detroit, Michigan. Yeah, I have I'm happily married, but I had a practice wife. I had to try it twice to get it right. So I'm up there in Detroit, and there's this brand we never heard of called Hungry Howie's. I think they're still like the 7th largest chain. But so we were going to do that, but we were living in Carbondale, Illinois, where we went to college, and we were getting ready to sign the franchise agreement for it. And they called us, said, got some bad news. There was a 10-unit deal that fell out in St. Louis, so we're not going to be able to bring you commissaries, groceries. You can open one up anywhere else in these states, or there are a couple that are for sale right now you could just jump right into. And I was going to continue working for a while. I was making really good money. And I thought Carbondale, Illinois was the center of the world. So like, nope, can't do that. So like in a frantic, I got on the internet and said pizza franchises. And it was a list of all these concepts I'd never heard of. And then there was like Little Caesars in there. And I was like, they're still around? Because there was none around. They all closed. So I was like, all I need is a logo and a mascot. I can make this work. I just knew I needed a system, right? So we submit our stuff, and this is before Hot and Ready. So they were doing Hot and Ready, but it was not even on their website. They were like, it was like low key secret mission stuff. So Charles is talking to the franchise rep, and they're like, they're not doing delivery anymore. They're only doing these $5 pizzas. I'm like, what? It wasn't even on the website. So we got in, I think, at the golden age of that, right? Yep. That was great. And then the next one was Valpak. How did I get in Valpak? Or how did we get in Valpak? It was one of the things that you could order marketing from, and it wasn't in our market. So I was like, well, that's an opportunity. Like, it'll grow the Little Caesars, and I can make some other money. So we get into Valpak, and you're selling advertisement. So you're interviewing all these business owners. And how we got into our next 2 industries was because every single time I'm like, everyone in this industry is a fucking idiot. Like, let's get in it. So I'm serious. Like the salons, we just knew, we were calling independent salon owners. They wouldn't advertise. They wouldn't return phone calls. Carpet cleaning guys were just complaining about having to discount and spend money on marketing. So I'm like, if we can actually run a good operation and intelligently market, we're going to kill it. So we went through those. We were at a show for the carpet cleaning, and not on stage with me, but another Sport Clips team leader had just bought into it and was raving how great it was and everything like that. I took Charles aside. I said, he's a bad operator. If he's making money on that, we'll make a lot of money. So we jumped into that. That's how we got into OxyFresh. And then Ideal Image, a good friend of mine, we're outside smoking a cigar, and he's like, yeah, I'm looking at this medical spot thing. I'm like, well, tell me about it. And the franchise rep was walking by, so we just grabbed him and made him smell our cigars for like 30 minutes and drill him with a bunch of questions. And then the next day, I had Charles go talk to him. So every one of our brands I've sniffed out. And I've sniffed out a lot of them, but the only ones we're in is the ones that he gets excited about too, because he's that simplifier. If he can see the back end and it's proof and he really likes it, it's normally a good combo. I get pretty excited about anything. I'm like a squirrel.
Yeah, unfortunately, I feel like there's a lot of really cool things out there that don't make money. So, it's really important to pick something that makes money. And, that's one of the big things I think for like entrepreneurs, is what's the number one thing for them, or what's the most important thing? And, what we've learned over the years is they've got to protect their confidence, if an entrepreneur loses their confidence, man, they may start making really bad decisions because they second guess themselves. And I take that a step further and I think, well, what really gives an entrepreneur confidence? And I think it's the report card. I'm the heavy finance guy, so it's like I always lean to that. It's your cash flow. So, if you got good cash flow, you have good confidence. And even if you are one of the best operators and you're very competent at what you do, if you hit a rough patch where you start really having troubles with cash flow, even if it's a millisecond, you guess yourself. You second guess yourself. Am I very good at this? There's just a lot of stuff that happens. So protecting the cash flow protects your confidence and keeps you out of, omission, of missing the things that you should have grabbed. And that normally happens because you're focused on trying to build the cash flow back up, or something that's from a negative standpoint, or somewhere from like a restrictive standpoint. So I just think it's really important to make sure that cash flow is always king, because that's going to drive that confidence to make the decisions. And if you're going to make that leap into a multi-brand or something, you need to go big on it. If you've got the cash flow already there, you're more confident in what you're going to do. So cash flow confidence.
Johnny, I think you actually found the red phone booth on a Facebook ad, wasn't it?
Yeah, believe it or not, I did. I think it was a Facebook ad or an Instagram, one of the two. And I clicked on it, filled out information. The guy called me like 20 times, never called him back. And so finally he called me, and I answered the phone call one day, and it was like a Thursday evening. He said, "Hey, the founder of the red phone booth is going to be in Nashville if you want to go have a drink with him." I was like, "Yeah, might as well. I've never been in there." And so I went in there and had a drink and a cigar, and really liked him, which I think is important as a leader and a visionary of the company and the brand. And then we started digging through the P&Ls and, well, not really P&Ls, but you know what I mean? You can't do that initially. But we started digging through the numbers and looking at the model. And I really like the model. And it's just a cool brand. And I think that's something that can get me out of bed every morning.
Any other questions from folks in the audience? Ryan?
As a franchisee, are there any questions that you've asked the franchisor that you feel like have really driven value for you as a franchisee? So, for example, like buying the ROFR or royalty ROFR. What's your experience with asking those questions, and what are some of the biggest needle movers?
So whenever I took over our two Pet Supplies Plus locations at the time, we were struggling like bleeding bad in that business. And I was drinking beer in college when I got my role, and so I didn't know what I was doing. But, I used my vendors and built relationships with my vendors, but also with corporate. Like, we would bounce our big orders on Friday mornings. I'd check my bank account first thing and be like, shoot, negative again, bounce. And so I would call them before, when I knew it was going to bounce, and be like, hey, can you give me another week? And he's like, yeah, I'll give you another week. But they probably wouldn't do that for everybody. But since we built relationships with them, they helped us in a bad time. And now that we're in a good place and know what we're doing, it's a lot easier to open stores, get them profitable quicker. But, the culture at Pet Supplies Plus is what we love. Like, the first time I met Chris Rowland, the CEO, awesome guy, we're out at 2 a.m. and he orders pizza for everybody that's still at the hotel bar. And I'm like, yeah, that's the guy I want to work with, because he's cool, relatable, and he works his butt off and will do anything to help you.
Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, as a franchisee relationship, we should be partners, and we're all in this together. And the better our stores do, the better everybody does, right? We all know that. But through COVID, Ryan, we learned a lot about some franchisors, and we had one model that we had stores closed, and they were started charging minimum royalties and fees, which was really, really tough for me to swallow, thinking I'm a partner with these guys and gals, and they're charging me $10,000 a month because I have stores closed. I didn't ask for the pandemic. I've got at least 250,000 plus in these stores that are shut down. Believe me, I'm doing everything I can to get these sumbitches back open, And so I felt like that we should have been a little bit better partners in that. And so as a franchisor, and Michael talked about this morning, and about what do you do to get through the pandemics of the world. It's a partnership.
I think it's safe to say you probably learned the most, the quickest in the very beginning. So we learned a lot from our first concept, which is restaurant business, right? Little Caesars. And I think the big takeaway that we've been able to use for every single business model we've jumped into is the power and importance of a good schedule. So we were busy, we were doing great. How I viewed what you can expect out of someone completely changed. I mean, the corporate guys came in and said, "You're not opening up store number 2 until you get your labor in line." We're making money. What do you think? You are now, but you're not going to have these grand opening sales 6 months from now. So we learned how to expect more and get more out of people through better training, development, and systems. I mean, Johnny, how long does it take for you guys to do your payroll for Sport Clips? Does it take days, hours? You doing it
Hours.
Yeah, we've got it down to, it's honestly like a 60-minute process. We figure out how to calculate all the commissions through a macro and things like that. So, but we've got guys in our system that had to do by 1 week half the stores, the other week the other half the stores, because it took a full day every week to do payroll, the same payroll that we're doing. It's just not necessary. So the power of the schedule, but the other thing about the schedule, not only just managing labor, but you got to schedule for growth, you've got to schedule for development, and if you don't put it on an actual schedule, it doesn't happen. So anything that you have wrong in operations, I'd always go back to the schedule as like the fundamental. Okay, you're short-staffed. Okay, you need to schedule some time to do some recruitment. My employees they're slow. They don't move fast. You need to schedule some training, right? So everything can go back to the schedule when you're coaching your operations people.
We have time for one more question.
As a newer franchisor, you guys are kind of the dream franchisees that I would be looking for. How do I find guys like y'all?
For your industry, not the restaurant business. Yeah, I was all stick, no carrot in the restaurant business. And then when I took over the Sport Clips, I was just like, oh shit, I can't do that here. So I immediately changed my value of, now kind of think about it, my first franchisor didn't really value the human asset, so I didn't either. It was my first business. But when I got into Sport Clips, it's like, you got a finite of people that are going to work for you because they have to be licensed. So they had to spend $20,000 and a year of their life getting trained to do the job. So you can't just, like in the pizza business, you can just fire that person and make pepperoni pizzas and tell the wife you're not coming home tonight. You can do that. I can't cut hair. You don't want me cutting hair. So I learned that very quickly. And every time I see people get into the food business or from the food business into the salon business, it doesn't go well because that industry is just, they need to be treated much differently than you would treat fast food people. Now, thusly, when I stopped being involved in the operations at Little Caesar, and Charles was like the only Kaiser that was doing the operations for Little Caesar, employee retention became amazing in the Little Caesars. So it was clearly me with my stick, right? Because Charles has never really been more of a stick. He's always been more of a carrot. So we've learned that, and we apply it to all of our concepts now. It's like you just overdevelop them. I'm running on here, but I came up with the concept